Hey everybody, just a quick update before we jump into this week's episode. We had a recording error and therefore we don't have a video version of this week. So we still have the audio. Audio is good, audio is great, and that's what you can listen to here on the YouTube as well this week. But like I said, sadly, no video version this week, but we'll have one next week. So don't you worry. Enjoy the episode. What's up everybody and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jerrett Wilson, joined by Rachel Mogan.
A buongiorno.
A buongiorno to you as well this fine Sunday morning.
It is a fine Sunday morning.
Nice and bright outside.
It's
the sun
hot.
is shining. It is hot already. We're very much in summer
already
here.
hot.
Yeah. Yesterday we were out doing stuff, or Friday night even we were out doing things in the yard, and last weekend we were doing a project over the holiday weekend.
Your fancy new patio.
Yeah, a little
so
patio
fancy.
in the backyard, but it was so hot. It got real hot. It's real hot real quick.
Yeah.
There's no chill in this summertime weather.
Hot takes from Jerrett Wilson.
Hot takes. But you know what other hot takes we're going to have on other topics of gaming here on Team Chat Podcast, a weekly video game show where we talk about games, the ones we love, the ones we hate, and everything in between. New episodes come out Tuesdays, 9 a.m. Central Time, and you can listen to those on podcast services around the World Wide Web, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and others. You can also watch a video version on YouTube. Check out teamchatpodcast.com/where to listen for a full list of all the places that the show is available. You can also find us on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Join our Discord server. Links are in the description below. And finally, we're a completely listener-supported show, so if you're really enjoying and digging what we're creating for you each and every week, head over to patreon.com/teamchatpodcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show, and in return, we'll give you a cool perk like getting the episodes early before our general Tuesday release and access to a private channel on our Discord server, the Rogues Gallery. Have to give a shout out to our newest patron, Joey. Thanks for supporting the show. We really appreciate it. And we love all of our patrons. Before we get to our main topic, we have a little bit of news. We actually have quite a bit of news.
Yeah, a lot of stuff happened.
Two big, we'll go ahead and say it. We're going to talk about it briefly. We're going to give you your releases, but we also have, we're going to give you the dates for E3 because E3 starts this week.
It
starts on Friday.
Yeah.
And then also we have the some big gaming reveals from the last week as of the Death Stranding trailer and Call of Duty Modern Warfare reveals. Yeah. So let's dig in. Let's jump into this news. Then we'll jump into our main topic.
A surprisingly packed week. So just in case you are not aware, here's the E3 schedule in its smallest crunch time I could manage. So EA is having their EA Play no conference, basically June 7th through June 9th. So at any time you should be able to tune into that. I don't know why you would want to, but it's there. Microsoft, they start on June 9th at 1 p.m. Pacific time, followed by Bethesda also on June 9th, followed by Devolver Digital, also on June 9th. That one we are all really excited about now, mostly because of your Katana Zero review.
Thank you.
Very good job, sir. Most people won't care about this, but maybe Jerrett and 5 other people maximum would care that PC gaming is doing their
I'm going to watch that one with rapt attention because I'm a new PC gamer.
You're a new PC gamer. So that one starts Monday, June 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, followed by Ubisoft, Monday, June 10th at 1 p.m. Square Enix has their spot Monday, June 10th as well, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And then the only one that I actually care about, and Devolver Digital, Nintendo is on Tuesday, June 11th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I'm going to call out of work. I'm going to be there. I'm not really, but
I was like, okay, wow, watch party.
I won't be doing my job. Joey, don't tell anybody. Me and Joey can watch it together. And then
there you go. Have a little watch party.
Both won't do our jobs. So that's the E3 schedule in a nutshell. And then in addition, we have some games coming out, I suppose. I don't remember what they are.
While you're pulling that up.
Yeah, while I'm pulling that up.
Obviously, we're not doing our E3 predictions episode and everything this year, but we will be doing a post E3 wrap up. Obviously, we'll also both be tweeting throughout the whole event, either from Team Chat and our own personal accounts as well. So if you really want to hear our thoughts and opinions on that, follow us on Twitter at Team Chat Podcast and follow me at JT Wilson and follow Mogan at MoganATX. And that way you can stay up to date with our E3 thoughts and opinions until we do our big wrap up episode.
Indeed. All right. So as of this episode's air date on June 4th, The Elder Scrolls Online Elsewhere?
Yeah, it's like Elsewhere.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls Online.
Little play.
That's funny. Okay, I actually really kind of like that now. Elsewhere comes out for PS4, Xbox One, and PC June 4th. Also on June 4th, Persona Q2, New Cinema Labyrinth for the 3DS.
Still making games for that 3DS.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool. It's a Persona game, I guess. Also on June 4th, Trover Saves the Universe, PC only. Warhammer Chaos Bane comes out June 4th as well for PS4, Xbox
Man,
One,
I swear
and
that there's a new
PC.
Warhammer game like every 2 months.
You can get into Warhammer now.
I know.
I think it's like best on PC, right?
I mean, it's it definitely is. This is one of those things, but I gotta pick and choose. There's too many options now
guess
available.
so.
I'm drowning out of the choice of options.
Yeah. And then there's a weird lull between June 4th and June 18th where nothing comes out, so we're just going to leave that as temporary dead space.
Boom, there you go.
And that's everything out now and coming soon.
So
Mostly just out now. Those were all on June 4th.
yeah, that was a lot. That was
Just
a pretty
kidding.
good list.
Good job.
Summer, it's kicking up. It's too hot outside. Everybody's got to stay inside, play some games. You know, it's going to be a great time.
Indeed.
So, Death Stranding. We got a new trailer, an almost 9-minute long trailer. They revealed the release date of November 8th of this year,
Yeah.
which was surprising.
Actually
I have
coming
to
out
say.
this year. Death Stranding is going to beat The Last of Us 2.
Oh, it definitely is.
It definitely is.
And that's what I believe Jason Schreier from Kotaku, he tweeted out some things that he's started hearing before the trailer officially dropped, he was thinking that Death Stranding was going to be this year and TLU was getting bumped. And he did say that apparently it was in the plan for TLU to be late 2019. And then eventually they did push it. So far, I believe my prediction of early 2020 is still ringing true. So
what did I say? 2028?
yeah, just never coming.
Probably.
But Death Stranding, do you still have any idea what's going on?
So-
we actually have more details.
That's the thing. I feel like I finally now have more of an idea of what's going on than ever before.
but
So
I still totally don't really know what's going on than ever before.
I don't care that I don't know what's going on in terms of the story. My biggest concern had always been that I could not figure out for the life of me what the gameplay was going to be like.
Right, which
and
it
that's
showed.
obviously, and it finally showed more of the gameplay. And now, finally, I'm actually interested. And I'm actually like, okay, something might actually be going on here that looks like it might be promising.
Yeah.
So I will say that all of the previous Death Stranding stuff, I've been like, whatever, ignore, don't really care. Now I'm finally like, okay,
I've been
all
super
right.
excited, or not super excited. I've been super interested, is a better way to put it, about Death Stranding, just because I have been so enamored by the mystery that surrounds the game of what its story is going to be
an
like.
amazing job of making itself a cult classic before the game has even come out.
Right.
By mythologizing itself.
Oh yeah, and it's now I will say I did roll my eyes pretty hard though when you find out the main character, Norman Reedus' character's name is Sam Bridges, and the like underlying theme of the game is like
is
connecting
connecting
humankind
people,
and
yeah.
building, even in like the official plot synopsis thing, like building in quotes bridges, and I was like, okay, now come on.
That's a little on the
on,
nose,
a little
Kojima.
on the nose,
You could have
Kojima.
done a little better than that. You could
So-
have called him like Sam Links.
Sam links, but that's what I mean. Like we have this idea better. It looks. I was actually watching the trailer again with my buddy Michael this morning, and it was just, and we were both like. He said it was like this seems to be 5 games in one. Like he's kind of more like I don't know what's going on, and I was kind of like I still don't totally understand how this is all gonna bridge together, but I am still very interested in it. But the one thing I will say, the question that I posed to him is like, are people gonna love this because it's Kojima? Or will they be able to acknowledge if it does come out and it is like a rambling mess of what is going on, that it's actually a rambling mess of what is going on?
I mean, I feel like there's always going to be those people who are in like the die-hard fan camp,
Mm-hmm.
and like no matter what, they're not going to be able to acknowledge criticism to its full extent. But that's all just maybes at this point. It might come out and be the greatest game of all
it
time.
absolutely
We
could.
straight up
Which
don't know.
I honestly is why I'm excited to play it, because I think it could be that thing.
I don't think
know
it's
if
gonna be that good.
I don't think it's going to be like the greatest, but I really do think it has this potential to be a really good game that I'm really
Right.
going to love. That's going to come out of left field to be this thing of like I have no idea what's going on. I don't understand it, but then as you play it and the layers become revealed beneath, then I'm going to be like, okay, this is good.
So we
This
haven't
is
actually
really good.
said anything about what happens in the trailer. If you haven't seen it yet, you can go watch
Again,
it
it's
on
9
YouTube.
minutes. It's not gonna
It's
recap
9
the whole
minutes
thing.
long. There's all kinds of analysis videos out there,
Yeah.
but just to like very, very briefly recap what happens. It opens with the classic baby in the esophagus, and you're like, cool, hey baby. And then this time you also go into the baby's mouth
Yeah.
for more trailer, I guess. And it's like, cool, whatever.
Again,
But
it's those layers you got to peel back.
we have learned a lot more about the babies in question, which actually I was talking talking to Cody and Candace the other night about what the babies might actually be, and there's some interesting theories out there. But I think that
in the trailer, go ahead.
I think that the trailer pretty much summarizes that the babies hook into these tanks that hook onto, at least in this case, Sam's suit, and I think the baby serves as some sort of a bridge. They do call them bridge babies.
Yeah.
That's not even a joke. Shame on me for trying to make a joke.
But it seems that his corporation, Sam Bridges' corporation, is called Bridges, so maybe he like runs some sort of research development thing that is based around these babies. So maybe calling them bridge babies is appropriate.
So bridge babies, I also think it's because they bridge the divide between the normal human world and whatever this other world is, where all of these mysterious creatures come from that are, I gather, what do they call them? BTs?
BTs.
These BTs, they come from this other world of like black goop, and it's like not really
I'm assuming
reality.
Death, like the world of
it looks
the dead.
like the underworld. So apparently,
because it says in the trailer something about people bound to Hades.
Yeah, exactly.
So which I'm assuming is Mads Mikkelsen's character, Cliff.
You think so? You think he's Hades?
I don't think he's Hades. I think he's bound to Hades.
Okay, I gotcha. I was like, really? Okay, we're going just right there. Anyways, so I think that the bridge babies are like the literal physical key of getting to the underworld. I think that's why they call them bridge babies.
So it does show the gameplay, like it shows you putting up a really long ladder and climbing
Fortnite style.
Yeah, and then it shows you like climbing and scaling down cliff walls. It does
Riding
show
a
some
sweet motorcycle.
some combat with a little bit of gunplay. Most of it though kind of seems to be melee. I feel like didn't I see somewhere in there that they made the announcement that the more people you kill kind of affects the outcome thing.
Really?
Like you're kind of not really supposed to. Probably falling in line with Metal Gear Solid influences of it is a more stealth-based things and you get better scores for being stealth. So I'm wondering if they're still kind of keeping that aspect in this.
Well, so there were definitely those stealth elements that we saw in the brief gameplay moments when those guys in like the suit showed up and they were trying to catch Sam.
Yeah.
And it showed him crouching in the long grass and trying to get around them. So I think the goal is to primarily go undetected whenever danger approaches. It did the same thing when the BTs were around and Sam was crouching, trying to move very slowly and quietly. They noticed him anyways, which I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but I think the point is going to be mostly stealth, with violence being a last-ditch effort.
Nice.
And it showed him just smacking a guy in the face with a briefcase.
Yeah.
That was again, cool.
I mean, unless you're hitting really hard, you're probably not going to kill somebody.
That looked like a really heavy briefcase.
That's true.
Did you see it? It was like made of metal.
It probably had some like samples of rocks and stuff like that he needs from his travels for scavenging. So yeah, it probably had some heft to it. So
that guy's dead.
He's dead. Skull's caved in.
Skull is caved in.
So obviously we we can look forward to November 8th. Maybe we'll get more info before then. I'm assuming. Well, no, it's PS4, so they won't be at E3.
They'll be at whatever Sony's big summit is.
That's what they'll have. So, which is really weird going into E3 and not having Sony stuff to look forward to. Because Sony is the one press conference that I really look forward to see what they're coming out with, the exclusives and everything like that. Like my one big E3 prediction would be that we get an announcement for like Horizon Zero Dawn 2, but we're not going to get that at E3, so I can't make that prediction.
Apparently
but,
not.
Apparently
Unless
not.
it's a Microsoft exclusive.
It's not going to happen. Gorilla just
Isn't that
just
a good
switches
joke?
sides and goes to Microsoft. It's like, see you later, Sony.
Oh, that
Thanks
would be
for
pretty
helping
funny.
us out. But so the other big thing we want to talk about was the announcement of Call of Duty Modern Warfare coming out October 25th of this year. Infinity Ward is behind this one development, and of course everybody was like, Modern Warfare, we've had this game before. It came out in 2007. It's called Call of Duty Modern Warfare. But the thing about this now that Infinity Ward and Activision has come out and saying is that it's not a sequel as much as it is a reboot retelling of Modern Warfare.
Which is why I'm calling it. And I already made the joke earlier, so it's okay if you don't laugh, Jarrett.
Okay,
but I'm going to call it Contemporary Warfare. Call of Duty Contemporary Warfare. Okay, it's going to have its own wing and its own little museum. It's going to be totally separate stuff. People are going to be like, what's the difference between modern and contemporary warfare? It's cultural.
But so it does introduce that the one of the big characters from the Modern Warfare series, Captain Price, is returning. And so this one does seem though that from all accounts that they put out, it is going to have I think I saved it actually on my Reddit because I wanted to read this.
If it's a reboot, why wouldn't he be back?
Well, because they could have just done it with new characters completely.
Oh.
But so they're basically they said Modern Warfare for what it was held up for the time it was made. But now you could say warfare is different from what it was 12 years ago, which I mean is true. But I mean, still, war's all pretty terrible. And so they wanted to do this. They wanted to retell the story again. From what I've read, though, it apparently seems that it's going to be pretty gritty, pretty like it's going to, even from what Activision has said, it's going to focus more on exploring morally gray characters, morally gray environments. So it's not going to be these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. It's also going to return to the older style in the Call of Duty, because like in Call of Duty 2, you played as British, you would play as American, and even Russian soldiers. In this one, you will be able to play as British Special Forces, American soldiers, and even like rebel or the insurgents or whatever the enemy groups that you're fighting against. So it is returning to this multifaceted view of Call of Duty games, which they haven't really done much recently. So this is what I wanted to say. I wanted to read Driftor on Twitter. He says, Call of Duty Modern Warfare makes Modern Warfare 2's No Russian, which is the level where they go through and shoot up the airport. Because they've already showed off stuff from, behind closed doors, Judges Week at E3 and all this stuff. So he says, I'm deadly serious. He says, makes Modern Warfare 2's No Russian look like a Pixar film. I'm deadly serious when I say that I was, he says saw, but I'm assuming he meant say. When I say that I was shocked by the level of realistic violence. We'll be surprised if this game gets M instead of AO. Good luck bringing it to New Zealand, Denmark, or other countries. So it's apparently pretty brutal, is what it sounds like. And so then my question, and Polygon actually had a really good article on this too that made me think about this more, is that this disconnects somewhat in Call of Duty to what the message it's trying to put up, because it's saying it's trying to present this realistic vision of war, but the point this writer was making, God, I can't talk this morning, is that that's all well and good if you're trying to make this really grounded war story and about the realistic and harshness and terribleness of war. And that's good. We need that in video games. Like we need that viewpoint like we get in movies. But when you compare it to what Call of Duty is more now at this point known for, which is its multiplayer, which is its over-the-top action of that, pairing the two together makes that seem empty. And so I'm interested to see. As we move on, I'll find that article so I can share that. But still, I was like, very good point. So I'm very curious to see where they bounce. I'm still very excited for this game because Modern Warfare is my favorite of the Call of Duty series. So I'm very excited to see this being rebooted. Captain Price is such a great character. I'm anxious to return and be in his boots again. And so I'm really looking forward to the game. I'm curious to see how they handle all this stuff because they want to bring this gravitas to the game and to the story, but can they do that well without it seeming cheap?
See, what's that great game that you played that's like the story of the French soldier and like his family and he gets something with a shovel? I want to say like stars.
Valiant Hearts.
Valiant Hearts.
Yes.
See, I feel like those are the kinds of stories and games that tell those more compassionate war stories a bit better.
I would agree.
Because they don't have this really over the top. I mean, it is glorified violence. Like there's nothing that's not being. They always portray it as being cool. Mm-hmm. Like it's never portrayed as definitively a bad thing. It's like, oh, hey, look at how many ways you can kill people. It's like, okay, cool. I guess that matches really well with your compassionate storytelling, except it doesn't. So Valiant Hearts, if you want a really good war story that actually has heart to it, go for that one. Otherwise, Call of Duty, contemporary warfare, excuse me.
Okay, I am trying to see if I can find this thing. Where did it go?
Or maybe even that new game, A Plague Tale. That seems to be a really...
I am really into Plague Tale. I want to play that one.
I had no idea that it was such a beautiful game. Like, I watched some of the gameplay for it, and I was like, oh my God, this is like really, really pretty.
Yeah, it looks really good. Okay, I'm going to have to hunt for that Polygon thing while we're jumping into the next, as you're introducing the next topic. I did want to say, though, the other thing that got me really excited, and I saw it this morning before we recorded, Sarah Schachner's doing the soundtrack for Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So
really?
Super excited for that. She is excellent. I'm so excited.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool stuff. So the main topic that we want to talk about today is we both played it because it was a free game on the PS Plus lineup for this month.
And it had been on my list of need to play for a long time.
It was not on my list, and it was due to your prompting being like, hey, we need to give this game a shot.
It's free!
Because you played it, you're like, this is the perfect time.
It's free, it's short.
I've heard a lot about this, let's play this game. And so we wanted to do a review of What Remains of Edith Finch. by Giant Sparrow. It came out in 2017. It is Giant Sparrow's second game. Their first game was The Unfinished Swan, which I played a little bit.
You played and I haven't played.
I think I'd showed you before, and it's a very interesting game in how it's like you start off literally with a blank white screen and you like throw paint around and to slowly reveal your environment and your direction where you should go.
But it's just black paint, right?
Yeah, some black paint.
So it's very like a visually
monochrome
striking game.
And very and again though, but how you can see the mechanics of how you explore that world translates over into what they did with Edith Finch. So let's give a brief, if you would like to give a brief summary of the game before, and again, per our normal reviews, we're going to kind of keep it light. But again, this game is shorter. It's an independent game. I think it maybe took us 3 hours to play through all the way. So it's very short.
I around a little bit, and it still only took me 4. So it's very short.
It's a very short game.
You can easily play it in one night.
Therefore, there's not a whole lot that we can talk about without getting too heavy, starting to reveal story stuff. So we'll start off spoiler-free. We'll let you know before we jump into the spoilers. So while I look for this Polygon article, because I do want to find it before I forget, can you give us a brief synopsis of what Remains of Edith Finch is all about?
Naturally, my lord.
Thank you.
So basically, what Remains of Edith Finch could be most accurately described as a walking simulator game. Now, anybody that's heard me talk about walking sims knows that I don't like that title because it's usually used with a very derogative kind of way to say, oh, it's just a walking sim. And it's like, you dumb bastard.
Having not played it, I very much started playing. I was like, oh, I bet this is what Firewatch is like.
It is, actually. So it's very similar to what Firewatch would be. And at least in tone at first, it is very similar to Gone Home. So having more recently played Gone Home as well, I was like, wow, I'm getting some big Gone Home vibes. So it's not quite like Firewatch in its tone. It is very much like Gone Home in its tone. So you start the game from the first-person perspective of an unnamed character. You're not really sure who you are. All you could really see of yourself are your hands, and you have like a cast on one hand and a journal in both of them.
Right.
You're on the back of a boat over what you later learn is Orcas Island area of the Pacific Northwest, which I believe is a real area. Like Orcas Island, that's a real place off the coast of Washington, right?
Also, all these developers love in the Pacific Northwest.
They all do. So they look out their window and they're like, where are we going to base our next game? No, okay, right here.
This world we know and love.
I guess they just pick wherever they have the free and most abundant source material.
Yeah.
They're like, what kind of plants can we draw? These ones right here. So anyways, you start out as this unnamed character. You open up this journal and see that it has a not super filled in, really all it has are names and dates, family tree. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of this blank family tree with these names and dates on it. And you're like, okay, I guess I'm learning about myself. And then the narration begins. And the narrator of the story is Edith Finch Jr. So there is an Edith Finch Sr., but you are Edie, aka Edith Finch Jr. And you are basically narrating the story of your family. And the idea is that the Finches came to the Pacific Northwest from what, Sweden?
Norway or Sweden?
It's Finland, Norway, or Sweden. Not gonna lie, I can't remember which one.
Pretty sure it's Norway.
You think it's Norway?
Pretty sure.
Okay, we'll just say it's Norway for the sake of it. So your great-grandfather, or whoever it is, Sven Finch, I guess. Odin Finch, you're right. His name is Odin Finch. He's the next one down. So Odin Finch brought his family over from Norway to Orcas Island in a very unusual manner. It seems that the Finch family, even in the old country, they call it, were known for being plagued by bad luck.
Yeah, from Norway.
So in an effort to basically outrun their bad luck, Odin Finch was like, okay, I'm just going to bring my entire family and our literal physical castle of a house to Norway. So there are these really funny scenes. Washington. Yes, I'm sorry.
Which also, can we talk about that for a second and how ridiculous that is?
So the scene is like,
I was first like, oh, they're just jumping across. No, they're going from Norway, hauling a house, which is in Europe, all the way, however they chose to do it, to Washington.
I assume they had sled dogs like tow it across the North Pole until they got to, I guess, Canada.
They didn't go into that much.
They didn't go into detail on it, but the images that you get are of a boat, like a literal boat, with an entire intact house just kind of strapped onto it. So that was Odin's goal, was to get his entire house to Washington. It didn't quite work out that way. Really close to the shore, they hit a storm. most of the house was drowned in the waters, along with almost like all the crew. Odin himself drowned in the process. But his daughter, Edith, and his, I guess, son-in-law, Sven?
Yeah, Sven was Edith's
so
husband.
Edith Sr. and Sven and their young daughter, Molly, all survived, and they had enough of the house's bricks to rebuild the original fireplace in the new home. So Edith Sr., Sven, and Molly all made it to the new world. They begin anew. They seem to be adapting pretty well, and I guess in the timeline, it would be like, what, early 1900s when they get there?
When they get there? I'm trying to think. I think 1920s,
Yeah,
maybe like 1930s.
It would have been the 20s or 30s based on their dress.
Right.
So it's kind of early 20th century thereabouts, and they're attempting to rebuild a new life. But, and this is something that we can talk about a little bit later.
Well, quick interjection, because I did find that article before we get too farther into this stuff. So the article, I'm just telling you this for your own reading. It was a really great article, and it really explains kind of what the issues that I was bringing up and made me think more deeply about this, other than just like, oh, I'm excited, it's going to be Modern Warfare and it's going to be gritty. So I think you should go back and look at this. Call of Duty Modern Warfare is a realistic reboot designed to make you feel uncomfortable by Michael McWhirter on Polygon. So go read that. It was an incredible article. Back to Edith Finch. But also, though, you kind of were expected something crazy to happen, or not crazy, but this to be kind of odd, because you walk up, because before you even get the background, I feel like, of the house, of Odin bringing the house over the ocean, you see the house, the Finch residence, and it's a weird house. It's like all built up. It's multi-stories, looks very structurally unsound.
It does.
I must say.
It is
I don't
not
care how crazy craftsmen builders this family is. It looks unsound.
If they were on that game Home Improvement, what's it called? Like Home Simulator?
Oh, House Flipper?
House Flipper. If they were on House Flipper, you would not be able to flip that house.
No. No one else would buy this house.
No. So the house itself, as Jerrett said, is like this rambling structure of what was an original, kind of, I guess, Victorian-style home with a lot of crazy attachments just built right on top of it, ending in one like big main spire kind of off to the side, very asymmetrically placed. So when Edith Jr. is narrating the beginning of the story, and she's explaining to someone how her mother died. She was the last of the Finch clan, Edith Jr. was. So she was like, okay, I finally have to go home. I finally have to go back to the house because all of my family is dead. I have to learn the secrets of my family's past, and the only way that I can do that is if I go home.
Because it sounds like her mother kept the family history hidden from her very strongly. It even is implied early game that they left in a hurry.
Yes.
I want to say, like, yes, one of the first times once you walk into the house, Edith makes the note of it looks like an explosion went off that only killed the humans.
Yeah.
Inside the house. So it's like, so she is obviously very puzzled and doesn't understand what's happening, what's going on, why her family has this
Curse?
dark past or curse or what's happening. And so she's gone back to the house to explore this.
Exactly. So basically the game centers around that. You're walking through your family home that you haven't been back to since you were a child. And as you're walking through the house, there are rooms for each individual character, because I guess the Finch family did not have any inkling to just repurpose rooms once somebody had been done occupying them. They kept every single person's room over the family tree preserved. And what you're finding as you're walking through the house, which is a really nice creepy touch, is that each of the rooms has been sealed shut with like the foam and everything. They've got big locks over the doors, but each of them has a peephole that you can basically use to get a bird's eye view into each room. And eventually you do learn how to access all of the rooms. But basically you're going through these rooms and finding some sort of window to the past for each individual character. In a lot of cases that comes in the form of books, journals, letters, some sort of written format, which is an account, usually from a first-person perspective, of what happened in that individual character's past and eventually what led to their death in most cases.
And that is, to me, where I feel like the game really came to life.
It
and
does,
like really,
in a big way.
And really shines, because if it really continued with you just walking from place to place, picking up and reading something, or having Edith Jr. explain things to you, I think this game would have, I would have lost interest very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
But what they did, though, is each family member's story, and you can kind of track all the family members in your journal. Like you said, it takes a first person perspective, and each one has a different, not gameplay mechanic, but a new. What's the word I'm looking for? A new style. Thank you.
They all have a different style, and they are extremely interactive in how they immerse you in each individual character's story. So this is really kind of where we're going to have to start talking about story elements. So if you don't want to know what happens in Edith Finch, you can tune out now, skip to the end.
We'll do a wrap up. Check the timestamps in the description. We'll have it stamped where we're done with spoilers and giving like our final wrap up.
I will say that I don't think either of us can individually tell with enough detail what it's like to play Edith Finch.
No.
So even if you listen to us explain what happens, do still please play it.
And honestly, like we could tell spoiler and we could talk about like what happened and like give the details of what happened, but I think save for like maybe the one last story twist at the very end, I think you could still very easily play and enjoy.
You can. I mean,
without even knowing what happens.
It's unique enough that even if you do know what's coming down the line, you're still going to get a lot out of it,
right.
I think. So one of the very first stories that you encounter is the story of Molly. Mm-hmm. So she is the only child of Sven and Edith Sr. that made it to the New World, but as you learn from her timeline, she did not make it out of childhood.
10, I believe.
Yeah, she made it to 10. So
when you're looking at the dates in the journal, you're like, good Lord, like, this is sad.
A lot of them died
is this
very
be
young.
Depressing?
Yeah. So it kind of walks that line of being both depressing and not depressing, and also gothic but not really gothic.
And also depressing, but it almost to me like started becoming almost a dark humor to the whole thing.
The game definitely has these parts that are almost humorous, and you're like, actually, this is a really good example.
The Molly example is actually perfect.
So the Molly story is hysterical and kind of grotesque and visceral all at the same time.
And I also have to say, I didn't, just because I was dumb, didn't realize what happened.
Oh.
And so for us, so maybe let's go through her story. Let's use her story as a kind of overarching example.
So Molly's story is the first one, and it's a fantastic window into what the rest of the game will be. So you get into Molly's room, you're looking at her stuff. It's like a time capsule into the past, and then you find her journal. And you begin to read her journal, and you first person go into the view of Molly as her own self as a child. So her story is, she wakes up one night, she had gotten into trouble, I guess, so her mom sent her to bed without dinner.
Her mother is Edith.
Her mother is Edith Sr.
Gotta keep there's a lot of names.
Yeah, so she wakes up, she's starving, she's so hungry. So she's like, Mom, can I come out now? And her mom is like, no, it's too late, go to bed. So she's like, man, what do I have in my room that I can eat? She eats her gerbils food, which is just a carrot, by the way. She eats her gerbils food, she's all out of Halloween candy. She eats an entire tube of toothpaste. She eats the holly berries off of a bough of holly on her window, and she's still so hungry. She even looks into her fish's bowl, and like if you look at the fish, she's like, I thought about it. And you're like looking at your goldfish.
The fish is like swimming. It's like,
and he's like, please don't eat me. And I was like, no, goldfishy. So you don't eat your goldfish, but you thought about it.
I did.
And then at a certain point, Molly hears a peep peep at the window and sees a bluebird outside. And she's like, oh man, I want to eat that bird. And it's like, oh my God, this is going down a dark alley.
Yeah.
So she opens up the window, and she's pretty high up. She's on like the third story or something of a really big house on a sheer cliff face, by the way. So they are very much in a precarious position. So when she opens up the window, it's kind of locked on a chain, so she can't quite get it all the way open. But all of a sudden,
locking a 10-year-old child's window.
But all of a sudden, you get this first example of this magical influence of the game, or like this otherworldly, dreamlike quality where, with no explanation, all of a sudden, Molly just becomes a cat. So she is a cat, and then you're a cat jumping around the trees outside trying to get a hold of this bird.
Yep.
But Molly is still narrating the whole time. She's like, and then I was a cat.
She knows what she was.
She knows what she is, and she knows what's going on. So she's chasing this mama bird, trying to get it. And then finally, you do catch the mama bird, and she eats it right then and there. And then in the air, wait, is this...
Because you jump and tackle the cat, tackle the bird, and you fall out of the tree. tree, and as she's falling out of the tree,
she becomes an owl.
Yes.
So then she's a great barn owl, and she's flying over snowy plains, and that was a really cool moment.
that was cool.
So when you're flying over these plains, you're looking out for more food because Molly is still hungry. And you hear and then eventually see baby rabbits. And so you're like, oh, I'm going to swoop down and get those rabbits. So in one of the few actual gameplay elements of it, you have to kind of line yourself up with the bunnies and then swoop down and grab them. And you like very viscerally
Graphically
eat them.
I was surprised.
You like, there's bone crunching. There's like this chomping noise.
You're seeing the rabbit like disappear into your gullet.
Yeah,
I
she's
was like,
and
what?
in one gulp, I choked him down.
It was
bones
weird.
and all. It was weird.
I didn't expect it.
And then you do it again. You go out and get a mama rabbit after that. And then once you're done very graphically eating the mama rabbit, you're still hungry and you turn into a shark,
Yeah.
a great white shark. And this is like one of the funniest parts of the game. I laughed out loud. So you're this big shark, but you're over land.
Yeah.
So you kind of fall out of a tree and like kind of onto this hill and you just roll down the
It looks
hill.
like one of those games where the like physics simulator games where you can just throw whatever objects or things
It
into
does.
it and,
It's hilarious.
and see how the physics react. And that's basically what this part was.
So as the shark, before you get into the water, all you can really kind of do is flop yourself around. So
Yeah.
you flop yourself down this hill, across a highway, and then you finally land in the ocean. And then as the shark, you swim around and you find a seal and you eat the seal. And then after you're done eating the seal, you're still hungry. So then you finally become an octopus and you get up onto this ship and you find these sailors on the ship like actual humans. And you're like, and I was so hungry. And you eat all of the sailors on board like whole as the octopus, as Molly as the octopus. And once you're done eating all of the sailors, you go back into the ocean. You're still so hungry. And the octopus eventually finds its way into a drainage pipe, I guess, and like goes up through the pipes looking for more food. Eventually you come out as the octopus. You come out of the toilet in Molly's own bedroom. And even though you are Molly, you're in her bedroom, you like kind of shuffle under her bed and then suddenly the view changes and you're Molly as a little girl again in her bed, but she's like, I know it's going to eat me.
Yeah.
I know it's under the bed. So even though you were the monster, you're about to basically eat yourself is what you think is about to happen. And all you know from the parents' perspective is that Molly disappeared, like the house swallowed her whole. So it's like, wow, what did actually happen to Molly?
So this is the thing where I honestly, because this happened and I was like, what is happening in this game? Because this is when it took the turn for me where I thought it was going to be this more just like an exploration of your family and your past, but now it's kind of throwing into this almost like otherworldly, magical, or like stuff into it. And I was like, what is happening? Only when I read the synopsis after I had completed the game and just to like help break it down and everything a little bit more, I read that it was the holly berries that poisoned Molly.
Oh.
So I guess it kind of explains some of these things, and that's, I guess, maybe part of the the mystery of this game is that these weird, somewhat magical things, like in Molly's case, happened, but they all, as you go through the game, like figure out how they kind of were explained or could be explained real world, I guess. Because like again, I ate it, and I was like, in my head, the gerbils food or the whole tube of toothpaste would have been what it would have done poor Molly in. But no, apparently it's the holly berries. So maybe, yeah. So I can't figure out if she like poisoned herself with those and that killed her, or if she like escaped out the house, or because I thought it was Edith's brother Milton that just disappeared, that they thought the house.
It is. Oh yeah, maybe I
Edith
got them.
Jr.'s brother.
Maybe I got them confused. So Edith Jr.'s brother Milton did disappear, and he just got. You find missing posters of him everywhere because
Right.
for him they have no idea what happened to him. But that's skipping ahead.
Right. Because I thought, yeah, a little bit. Okay, we're getting all confused, but that's digging a little too deep into what we're wanting to do. But still, so that's a perfect example of these fantastical adventures you kind of go through, and they're all very short. Like Molly's story was honestly one of the longer.
Yeah, hers was pretty long.
A couple of the other siblings or like your ancestors and stuff, they were very quick stories.
Hers probably took like what 5 to 10 minutes.
Something like that. Yeah. Whereas some others would be you basically just read and hear the story. Some you have a brief moment of trying to of doing some kind of action or figuring out some words, but it doesn't. But again, they're very short and very quick. So again, you start going through this and you're like, oh, this game's going to be done pretty fast.
Yeah.
So what would be the thing about it then that you think really caught you with this one and made, because when you presented that we do this one is because you had played a little bit of it when the game was first released on the PS Plus, but you likened it a lot to kind of how it compared with what we were doing with Life is Strange 2 right now, or you saw similarities, I wanted to say, or
that it was so much better.
It was better,
yeah,
and how it was able to tell a story more controlled, but it was the combination of the two. And then I saw the kind of how you go around the rooms and explore is very similar to a lot of the actions you take place in Life is Strange. And kind of how you're walking around rooms, you're exploring things. And I liked, though, the difference, though, with Edith Finch as opposed to Life is Strange, is that Life is Strange, I feel like it gives you a lot of things to look at, and you don't know which ones are important or which ones are going to be things that you can save for later, especially if you're looking for the collectibles for trophies. Whereas this one, it only had like 3-4 things tops per room that you had to look at. And it was all very easily identifiable.
Yeah, like there would be little tiny white spots, like everywhere in a room where you were like, okay, that's something I need to interact with.
Right.
So the game does do a good job of streamlining the process, which I think helps the narration.
And also, though, in those nice gameplay mechanic touch is that they do make, you don't just hit the select button to activate that thing when you find it. You have to hold like R1 on PS4, what we were playing on. You had to hold R1, which then usually made Edith grab the object. And then say if it's a book, you had to move the control sticks, the left one to the left, the right one to the right, so to be an opening motion, and she opens the book. So I love that they really added in those little touches to make even those minute details of gameplay give it a little bit more depth.
And did you notice that with which is the kid that wanted to go to space? Calvin.
Yep.
Is that his name? So with Calvin died by flinging himself into the sea, apparently.
Again, this is where I bring up the house. I don't think these people were very smart. They built a swing for children overlooking a huge cliff that drops into the sea.
Now, to be fair, it was kind of Calvin's own fault because he wanted to go all the way around.
But you should take into
he
account
wanted to be able to go to space.
Kids are nuts. They don't know what they're doing.
But so did you notice that as you're Calvin and as you're pumping your legs on the swing, you can actually do them both separately.
Right, and you don't go as fast or as hard.
And you don't go in the right direction if you don't do them both at the same time. I was like, that's a nice touch. I really like that.
And that's what I meant when I said earlier about how the stories are what really bring the game to life. And I think that was the main goal, obviously. But if you were just walking around the house and reading these things, this would be a very boring game. But the way that they change up each and every story to make it different and to really give each one a new little puzzle that you have to figure out on the best way to accomplish a story and make your way through the story is what makes this game engaging and fun and keeping you through the whole thing.
And before we move on to kind of some of the broader themes of what I think the game is dealing with,
which is what I really want to talk to you a lot about.
I do want to highlight what I thought was arguably the best and most interesting of the stories, which is Edith Jr.'s other brother, Lewis.
Yes. Who worked at the cannery.
Who worked at a cannery. So Lewis.
Why are we good? We bounce off each other.
Lewis is of the same generation as Edith Jr. and Milton. So they were actually kids in the mid to late 90s?
Yeah.
So they're actually very contemporary. I think even in Lewis's room, which is quite literally a boat on top of the house that is decked out in weed life.
Bringing up the structural integrity of this structure. It's not great.
It's not great. So Lewis probably made it to his young 20s?
I'm thinking early
late
20s.
Teens, young 20s. And it's implied by Edith Jr.'s narration that he probably got really depressed just kind of by life. He didn't like his job at the cannery, but he was really into video games all of their time growing up. And eventually, basically, he sort of spirals down his own imaginary abyss because his imagination is so vivid and so wild, and the game portrays this to you in a fantastic way.
Yes.
So you are first person as Lewis, and you are quite literally just running fish into this fish D header, and then you have to slide them off onto a conveyor belt. And you do that by using the controls. I think you use the
right. I think it's right stick for this part.
I think you use the right stick for this part.
Yeah.
And this is important because you have to keep doing his job. You have have to keep running these fish into the chopper and then onto the conveyor belt consistently, or the fish will back up. And then the longer you do this, the further along you get in Lewis's story, which is like a top-down video game. It actually kind of looks like a dungeon crawler.
Yeah.
Because then with the left stick, you're controlling Lewis's imaginary character. And you're basically running your little dude, your little knight or whatever you want to call him, through Lewis's internal game. And it's a fantastic example of his imagination literally taking over the screen, because at first his imagination is just a little corner of the game and most of it is the fish in reality. And by the end of it, once you get to the end of the line of his internal story, it's the entire screen, but you are still having to run the fish because in reality, you know they're still in the background. And it's a really interesting juxtaposition of having to do two separate things at once.
It honestly was pretty, like at first, I got pretty backed up when you're doing the first little bits of trying to escape the labyrinth, because it's also nice in how it builds up the difficulty of kind of like what you have to do. Yeah. Because eventually it is just this, when it begins, it's this little tiny corner on the left side of the screen as you're still seeing him cutting the fish in the main part of the screen. But like you said, as it goes on, it slowly takes over. So you're seeing more of his imagination take over the screen, eventually to the point where you don't even see the fish. And you're having to do that based off of the audio cues and even maybe slight vibrational cues.
Like muscle memory,
basically, of what you're doing with the fish. You just kind of
have to assume that you're doing it right.
And so, but this one, I mean, like you can tell from his story, like Lewis was very troubled and, like you said, fell into depression and everything. But how that one ended, I was kind of like, oh.
So actually, it's not even Lewis narrating his own story. It's a letter from his therapist to his mother.
Detailing what happened.
Basically trying to explain why Lewis killed himself. Because at the end of Lewis's imaginary story, he gets to basically this state of like, he knows and acknowledges that his imagination and his imaginary world is better and more fantastic than anything that he will ever have in real life. In fact, he even says that in his imaginary world, he feels that that is his true self, not the Lewis in the real world.
Right.
So at the end of his story arc, you basically get to this point where you're like, okay, you're going to ascend the throne, you're going to become the master of this realm. All you have to do is accept your crown. So you bow down your head into what is essentially a guillotine.
Yeah.
And then it chops off your own head.
I mean, I'm assuming he stuck his head in his fish.
And in real life, he stuck his head in like the fish chopper and killed himself that way. And it's like, wow, that's a really dark way to explain, sort of losing grip with reality. But is it really that sad? Because this is kind of the feeling that I had in a lot of these stories, is that Lewis's life sucked. He worked at a gross cannery. He really had no prospects. In his imaginary realm, he was happy, successful. Is his story bad? That's the thing. I couldn't really
there's
decide.
A lot of discussion of this. Partially for me, especially because Lewis is one of the later stories you discover. At this point, in my only kind of knock against the game, honestly, is at this point, it got to a point where some of the things that started happening, I was almost like, this is too ridiculous. Do you know if that makes sense? Like it was almost like, okay, like I get it. This family's had a really rough go. Why is it still piling on? Which I know happens in the real world.
Well, so I don't think it's piling on because I think
it just kind of felt by the end. I was kind of like, okay, something terrible is going to happen to this person, and and it was almost this thing of like, I knew that was going to happen, and so it lessened its impact for me by the end because I was just like, something terrible is going to happen. Oh yeah.
See, I didn't feel that way at all. I felt very much the opposite of like, yeah, I knew everybody was going to die. That's the point.
I knew they were all going to die too.
That's the point.
Right.
So I feel like I didn't even really think it was that ridiculous because I feel like the way that this family is meant to basically go extinct is supposed to be really over the top and really bombastic because their life is crazy.
Yeah.
Their house is crazy. Their history is crazy.
That's true.
Why wouldn't their individual deaths also all be in their own way pretty crazy? So I don't think that I had any problems with that. I very much embraced it. And I think it draws on this broader theme of, in a certain way, I would say that the themes of Edith Finch are interestingly kind of Lovecraftian because
They very much have that feel.
It's got this idea of like, here's this family that is so cursed that they can never escape it, and you're not really sure where the curse comes from or why.
Or if it's even a curse.
Or if it's even a curse or if it's just bad luck. But I feel like it probably is. I feel like the game wants you to believe that there's more to it than just reality. Because the way that some of the characters die, like with example Milton, he does just go missing, and you're not really sure where he went. But what you do see is that in his flip book, he painted himself a door and walked through the door, and no one ever saw him again.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're actually in Milton's room, which is full of painted structures, one of them is a painted door, and there are yellow paint prints on the ground leading to the door. Where'd Milton go?
Yeah.
I mean, his footprints don't lead out the window.
That's true.
And in the case of, for example, Barbara, nobody really knows what happened to Barbara because in her story, you basically read her life as a comic book because she was a washed out child star who made it to like 16 or 17. And then she goes somewhere. All they find of her is her ear. Remember? Like,
Well,
it's
because
just
there was
her...
the home intruder.
Yeah, well,
so
there was a home intruder, but they never found him.
They never said for sure.
All they said for sure is that, well, she's dead. We don't really know where she is. And it's implied that it was sort of this demonic presence that got her. And it's like, maybe it is.
So again, the house.
Yeah,
kind of a
again,
curse.
maybe it's the house. And I feel like that's kind of what the story is trying to tell you, is that it's the house. Because what did they bring with them when they left Norway? Their
house.
own freaking house.
Which then
what
they
did they
use the
use
fire-
to build the new house? Parts of the old house.
get it.
Of
I'm
course you
seeing-
can't get away from your own past. You brought it with you.
Right.
So I feel like the story is more trying to be like, no, something is definitely following them, and it's kind of their own fault because they brought it with them.
But so I didn't necessarily, though, so I understand that, and that does make a lot of sense. But the other kind of theme, I guess, that became apparent to me, especially at the end of the game, was maybe like the curse of the Finches is that they couldn't see past their own like fear of this to enjoy that the lives that they are actually having, and to enjoy the time that they had with those people before they were killed.
Yeah, I definitely agree that that is one of the other themes of the game because, for example, Edith's mother, Dawn, she was so obsessed with basically trying to stop her family from dying that it might ultimately be what kind of led to her own death because Dawn arguably made it the longest.
Yes.
Except for maybe Edith Sr. Edith Sr.
Senior
believed
made
a long
definitely
time.
the longest.
But Dawn, Edie Jr.'s own mother, she made it a long time and they even left the house. But did the stress of that lead to her death? Because it's implied that she died in a hospital. Maybe it was just cancer. Maybe she just got really sick in old age.
Sickness, yeah.
But who knows? Maybe it was the lingering effect of believing that you are doomed. That is what doomed her.
Didn't allow them to live a full life because they were so
Exactly.
obsessed over this. I mean, but you got to hand it to them, like seemingly pretty real curse.
Yeah.
But they weren't able, and so that's part of the thing, though. But because when Dawn goes and tries to, she's the one who actually sealed off the rooms, not Edith Senior, Odin's daughter. Like she's the one, Edith Senior is the one who they call in the game Edie to help maintain this, so they're not having to call it Edith Junior, Edith Senior all the time. It's Edie and Edith. But Edie, she's the one who insisted on putting the peepholes so that these parts of her life and her family's life wouldn't be lost forever. So it's kind of like you kind of feel like Edith Senior was the one who was kind of trying to be that guiding light of like, hey, stuff happens, but life's still wonderful, and like bad things happen, and tried to help her family see that, but nobody else would be able because they were too in their head, especially Dawn, about going to the extent of sealing off rooms and sealing off parts of this house because they just didn't want any memory of what had happened.
Yeah, Dawn
which
was
leads
trying
to why
to bury
Edith
the
Jr.
past.
Exactly, Edith Jr. knows nothing of her family. She interacted with Edith Senior, but before they left the house, but she was still a young child, so it basically is like in this way of trying to save her family, like Dawn robbed her children of this memory of their family, and so it is this thing. I think
Or
that
really
was
just
kind
her
of
one remaining child,
right because
the
at that
others
point
were
Lewis and
dead.
Milton were gone, and so it really was this thing of I think not focusing so much on the terrible and remembering the good and the wonderful that you had with these people.
My other theory, and this is like wild conspiracy theory, is that the curse isn't actually a curse. it's Edith Sr., because she's the one who keeps memorializing all the family members, and it's implied that she writes stories about them. And remember at the end of the game where they're going through Edie's last memory of them in the house, where it's the night that they left, and Edith Sr. tries to show Edie the story that she wrote about Edie, because it's like, do you know what happened on the day you were born, or something like that? And Dawn vehemently tries to stop her. So it's like, my other theory is that, is Edith Sr. writing stories about everyone that eventually come true? So I don't know, maybe Edith Sr.'s accidentally killing people.
I don't know if they were coming
true. It's wild
true.
Conspiracy theory. I was just like, maybe she's the curse.
Maybe. But I don't know if that one necessarily, to me, rings true because, especially with Sven, remember, he was trying to build that slide. That was like shaped like the dragon, and it falls and kills him. Obviously, because no one knows how to build a damn house.
I mean, he had the most a realistic death.
Yeah.
Like he just died in a construction accident. It's like,
But then she wrote it as
sense.
he died fighting a dragon. And so I'm wondering if she just, to make it less painful, she thought of these ways.
Maybe so. That's probably more accurate. I just wanted to be like, what if it is her?
I know. That's true. That's true. I mean, I'm sure. Let's make a whole video breakdown of why it's Edith Finch Sr., of why all this terrible things are happening. So really, that's pretty much the main depth of it, is that as you go through this game, uncovering all these different secrets and uncovering the past of the family. And, I believe it's one of those games, too. It's very much is one that allows you to kind of make your own. Like, we both have somewhat different opinions on what the game means and what the game's about. And I think that's one of the strong points of this game, is it really leaves that open to interpretation. But the one thing that I did think was very interesting, the final twist, really, of the game, which is, so if you don't want this spoiled, we alluded to this earlier, if you don't want this spoiled, skip forward for a few seconds here. But the main twist of the game is that it's revealed at the end, it's not, you're actually kind of playing as Edith Jr.'s son, because it was revealed midway through the game that she's pregnant at the point, and that she actually died in childbirth with her son.
Yep.
So, and then it shows the final shot of the game really is the son at her memorial tombstone at the house.
Exactly. So that opening scene then on the boat of the person with the cast, that was her son. Mm-hmm. And then when he opens the book to that blank family tree, the narration begins with Edie Jr. And that's sort of what you play as, but ultimately you are the boy experiencing the story told from his mother's perspective.
Right.
So it's implied that Edie is not implied. Edie wasn't the last of the Finches then. She thought she might be, because she wasn't sure if she would make it to be able to actually birth her son. But there is one more left. There's whatever the son's name is. I can't remember.
And I don't think it says. But also, depending on how you look at it, she has now broken and made broken the curse in a sense, in that she actually her son now is prepared to step into life knowing exactly what happened to his family. And also now has the discernment from Edith Jr.'s journal to know that to enjoy the things of life, to learn about your family, regardless of how terrible some past instances have been, and to really just enjoy the time and the things that you have. That's what I took anyway.
See, even
is
with
it kind of
that,
breaks the cycle.
See, I don't think so. I don't think that it broke the cycle, because Edie intentionally brought him back to the house, even in her death, by writing about it and telling him to go home. She brought him back. She could have just birthed him and let it go.
Yeah.
And that would have been breaking the cycle. But because she redirected him back home, I feel like it's more a thing of oh, okay, the curse is going to keep going. But even though she may have broken the cycle of, I don't even think that people weren't able to enjoy life. I think they did. I mean, Edie Sr. and Sven, the ones that made it pretty long, except for Dawn. Dawn was the only one that was obsessed with trying to avoid it.
Right, and I think that's where my viewpoint of the game comes from, is more because you are hearing it from Edith Jr., so you are hearing the very heavily influenced version of things that she got from Dawn. And so I feel like that's where it was more, I feel like she broke the cycle in that way. Maybe not so much in the curse, if she did send her son back to the house. But also, Dawn sent her back empty-handed.
Yeah.
Edith sent her son back fully prepared to know what's happened.
See, even that, though, Dawn is the one that took them away from the house. And when she died, even Dawn sent Edie back.
Yeah.
So that kind of reinforces this idea of, I don't think it's their choice. I think something supernatural compels them to return to the house. So even when they try to leave, even when they do successfully leave, something ultimately brings them back. That's what like reinforces the idea for me that like it's the house.
Yeah.
The house has something in it, or it is its own thing, and it keeps bringing them back maliciously.
Interesting. Interesting.
That's what I think is going on.
Very cool. Wrap up. Impression, like, what'd you think? How'd you enjoy it? Recommend to others?
Loved it. 10 out of 10 would recommend, if only because it is such an amazing example of really unique and compelling storytelling. This isn't cinematic, it's really good storytelling.
Yes.
And it won a lot of awards for Best Narrative, I think, in 2017, and it deserves them. So if you want, it's like reading a book almost.
It
like
really is, because the game like
Yeah.
shows every bit of Edith's narration, which I thought was a great bit. It works out well with the game itself, but also to make it more accessible to all players. It shows the text for literally, it shows you text for literally everything that is said in the game.
Yeah,
and I think that was great.
It's a fantastic example of just really tight writing, great storytelling, and a story that you actually want to play through, even if you feel like you know what's going to happen. So I would definitely recommend it, especially that it's short and free.
Yeah, I mean,
this is
for
probably
now,
like
it's
the
free.
last weekend that you can probably get it, right? Because it was the May
Yes, because
free
it's
game.
May. So actually, by the time this is out, it's done. Like you can't get it, and you can get the 2 new games actually, which are Sonic Mania and
really?
Borderlands.
Oh.
The first Borderlands and Sonic Mania. Those are the
take
free
Sonic
PS Plus
Mania.
games for the month of June. So for me, I agree. Excellently well done game. I had really no qualms other than the one bit that I brought up where I was kind of like, okay, like it's getting a little in my head, like it was kind of tipping the scale of believability where I'm like, okay, this is kind of getting a little ridiculous. But I really only had that moment once, but I think before Lewis's story. Then I played Lewis's story and I was like, okay, bringing it back, it's kind of grounding this all for me. But in general, the game is not one necessarily that I think clicks to me as well. I really enjoyed it. Do I think it's like my top 10 game? No, but still, I can see it for what it is. So even though it wasn't one that necessarily clicks for me, I see and agree with everything you're saying. So I completely agree. Like 10 out of 10. Like it was it was very well done and very well packaged for the story that it gives.
And even when it's not free, like if you're not able to get it on PS Plus this month, it's still not expensive.
Yeah.
It's an older indie game by now. You can get it on a bunch of different platforms, and it's not that much. It's got to be what, less than 15 bucks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great game. Let us know what you think of What Remains of Edith Finch. We'd love to hear all and get involved either on the Discord or in the comments of like what we all think the game means and what it's
Theories.
true.
Conspiracy
Yeah,
theories.
exactly. We want to dig deep into this game because this one is really one that benefits a lot from and like really lends itself well to being one that you can theorize on for a long time.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking. Use
Something
those
that
put
you
on those
don't
thinking
often
caps.
get to use.
We used to say in school, put on your thinking cap, and think. Analyze the problems and the stories and themes of What Remains of Edith Finch. But before we go, we do have to do our soundtrack spotlight, which we're going to focus on music from What Remains of Edith Finch. We're bringing you the main theme. This one, though, we don't really touch on the soundtrack that much because this game is one that didn't necessarily lend itself to having a very good soundtrack. I mean, it does have a very good soundtrack. Let me be clear on that. It was very peaceful, just like more ambient tones underlying. It wasn't meant to be one that really drives the action and pushes the story forward like some other soundtracks that we feature. So it is just more soothing, ambient, relaxing. But we're going to bring you the main track from the main theme from What Remains of Edith Finch, composed by Jeff Russo. Thanks again, everybody, for listening to us and joining us for this episode of Team Chat Podcast. Come back next week for another great episode on another fun gaming topic. And also, don't forget to follow us on all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Check us out on our Patreon page. We would love to support. Thank you again, Joey, and all of our other patrons for your support of the show. We'll see you all next time. Stick around for the song.